Right, good evening everybody, cohort 4, cohort 5, and all our guests. One thing that's unique about the Lancaster MBA, at least in Ghana, compared to other Ghana MBAs, is these masterclasses that we hold every Friday of the weekend workshops. And we've had quite preeminent people come and speak to us. And that has been a privilege. And I think this evening we have a great privilege actually to have Mr. Kweku Andoh Awotwi.
Who can help me here? Gold, commodities, options. What do you do to stay in the business? What do you do? So what do you do? What do you hedge? What do you protect yourself with? Prices down. Keep going. You buy options, you buy puts, calls. What do you do? Have we done finance yet? We're doing it now. Have we done options yet, derivatives?
No.
Yes?
No.
So who can volunteer?
You can sell calls.
Okay, you can sell calls. It exposes you because if someone buys them, you've got to pay them. You can buy puts. Puts protect you on the downside. When you buy calls, you're exposed to the upside. So you know it's like anything you produce. If I'm a fisherman and I sell fish, I can say every week, come and buy my fish, and we agree a price. That's called a forward price. Right? You can buy it every month. Or you can buy an option to buy calls. Basically what the call does is that I bought today at 250. If the gold price goes to 300, I'll get a little bit of that $50 increment. I'll share it with you or with somebody. But I pay for it. I pay a premium for that option. Option means a call. I'm exposed to the upside of the gold price. And you know the companies that buy a lot of derivatives are commodity companies. Guess who else buys derivatives? Who can guess? Airlines. Airlines. Fluctuating price of crude oil or refined products, they've got to protect themselves. And a lot of people have different reasons for buying commodities. What do you think the most important reason is? I'm buying options. I said commodities, I meant options. What do you think the most important reason is? I buy from you, every month you come. What do you think? I'm buying an option, a call or a put or any other option.
Hedge protection.
Okay, protection is one. Predictable cash flow. If I have a derivative program that goes out in time long enough, I know that every month, every year, I will have predictable cash flow. And what a lot of companies do, depending on their strategy, is typically they'll say, I need to make sure that 60% of my revenue I can predict. Because every month I have to pay the bank so much. So you look at your portfolio or your revenue and you hedge 60% of it. And then you say the other 40%, well, let's see what happens. But you know that every month, every year, no matter what happens to the price of crude oil, gold, share nut, groundnut, I'll get X. And I'll pay my bankers Y. And that's why a lot of companies hedge. Sometimes people speculate. So, you buy the call, you hope the price goes up to 400 because you want to make money. But most companies, they buy to protect. They typically protect on what they call the downside. If things go really low, you know that you have a floor. You will never go below that floor. And to do that, you buy puts. Puts is a right, basically. You buy the put. I bought a put at $250. Remember, my gold price is $250. So I buy a put at $250. I pay for it, by the way. It's not cheap. But no matter what happens to the gold price, I will always get a price not less than 250, no matter what happens. So if you think the gold price is at 250 and going down, what do you do? What do? You buy a lot of puts. Now, if gold is money, how far do you think I can go out buying puts? So, the background is this. Options aren't cheap. But if I were to hedge, if I were to pay for certainty a year from now, it's quite expensive. And it's oil. I can't put oil in the bank, can I? As a gold producer, I could hedge out 10 years. It's money. I can put it in the bank, get it back as money. So Ashanti Goldfields hedged out 10 years. So we had 10-year protection. Okay. So and I remember in the summer of 98, thereabouts. I know some of you, I'm not sure how many of you were born. We were thought of as the most sophisticated hedgers in the business. And we're run by Africans. We were believing our own PR. Anyway, so what do you think happened in 98 or 99? Now I'm talking 99. Why do you think Ashanti got into trouble? Here we are. We've acquired 3 companies, publicly listed, international stock exchanges. We are growing from 500,000 ounces a year to 1 million ounces a year. We're growing. We're acquiring companies. We've hedged out for 10 years. How could I possibly get into trouble? Why do you think I got into trouble?
The price goes up.
What happens?
That means you lose.
Why?
Because you hedged at a lower price.
I don't have to pay more for that lower price, do I? How do you think a put works? A call, I write the price. A put, it's a floor. But I can sell puts, sell calls. It depends on what I do, right? Are you with me? So you're not completely wrong. A lot of companies have found they got themselves into trouble with derivatives, not just Ashanti. So they do what they call very simple hedges. A call, you buy it, you write the price. A put, for a period, you have a floor. But then you can do what you call straddles, you have swaps, you can do some very fancy things. Sometimes you protect yourself for a band. So one of the things Ashanti would do is between 250 and 275, I locked in my margin. After that, if it went up, I'd make money, and if it went down, I stayed put. But there's a price for all of these things. So here's what started to happen in September of 1999. The gold price started to go up. The gold price started to go up. Why do you think that was a problem? I mean, I should be happy. The gold price started to go up, and we started to panic.
Was it because you had locked?
Go ahead.
You had locked your price at 250%.
Good. Part of it, yes, good.
So you can't take advantage of the windfall.
So I lose the windfall. So what? Gold price started to go up every day. Sam Jonah would call us, his key executives. What's happening to the gold price? What should we do? What's happening to our hedge book? Why do you think we were panicking? Because when you buy derivatives, typically what you have is a margin. What you do is you call margin. So the bank say, we've sold you this instrument. You have unlimited exposure to the price. You will benefit. You could go up $1,000. I'm exposed. You have to put down a deposit, like a collateral. We had hedged 10 years worth of our gold. Can you imagine how much that is? every dollar of exposure was about 10 to 20 million downside for us. So by the time the gold price got to 275, we owed the banks $300 million. And then they wanted margin. We needed to pay. And did we have it? 300 million. As it turned out, we didn't. Why didn't we? Why do you think we didn't? We've acquired 3 companies. We are growing. We are building companies, mines. Why do you think we didn't have $300 million?
What the capital intensive expenditure? Just before that.
Okay, that's a good clue. Who else? I'm building, I'm growing. They want 300 million. What's the problem?
Cash flow.
Cash flow. I'm over leveraged. I put in all my money to mines, to acquisitions. I had no cash lying around to post margin. You know what happens is that this finance industry that some of you are preparing for is a very small industry. The minute Goldman Sachs in London started to sense we didn't have 300 million, guess what? Told his colleagues in the city, Ashanti looks like they're in trouble. So now you call for your money. You call for your money. You call for your money. And the 300 million becomes 600 million. And the gold price is also going up, by the way. Because the speculators sense that Ashanti is in trouble. And they just want to make money. So they just want to ride that price, make a quick buck. Doesn't matter what Ashanti, who's Ashanti anyway. So the gold price, in a very short period, so we've been at 250 for 2 years. All of a sudden, in 3 weeks, we go from 250 to 275. And we go from having an equity value of who knows what, 500 million, to now we owe the banks 300 million and we can't pay. And they want their money. So, October 1st, we fly up to London, myself and our CFO. As it turned out, we were so clever, we had made hedge arrangements with, how many banks do you think? 24. 24 hedge banks. And each one had a different exposure to us. 300 million here, 10 million here, 20 million here. So, you're the CFO. What do you do? Tell me. Try. You're the CFO. Here you are. You have reserves, ounces that are worth billions. Billions. You can produce for the next 10 years. 1 million ounces a year. But you can put in place a derivatives plan where now you owe the banks 300. I can pay them, just give me time, no? Or
I'll flood the market and reduce the price.
you flood the market with what?
We'll go and reduce the price, perhaps.
But you have to produce the gold, right? So you flood the market. Who else has it? You're the CFO. Who else is the CFO?
Anyway, I'm not a finance person. Right?
Who's the finance person here? Okay. Who wants to be a finance person? I'm the CFO. I'm the CFO. I have 1 billion ounces of gold. 1 million ounces a year. And I have the hedge book. I owe the banks 300 million. They want their money. True. They wanted their money now. What do you do? What do you do? You're the CFO. So you were with me that day. You fly to London on October 1st with a CFO to meet your 24 hedge banks. What are you going to tell them? You've got 1 million ounces worth of gold, I'm worth $10 billion. I owe you only 300 million. Yes.
Three things. Can I sell the gold to them at a low cost?
What low cost? The price of gold is $275.
And also that they sell it and make some money, or can they buy into the company?
You want them to buy the company? Yeah, we're listed in London. We're listed in London and New York. Publicly listed. Our share price, we'll get to that in a minute. $7 a share at the time. You, sir, what would you do? CFO. CFO. You've got 1 million ounces, you're worth $10 billion. You owe the banks only $300 million. But they want their money now. You don't have the cash.
Can you look for any other facility that will give you the money?
What assurance we give? We borrow with what?
With gold.
So you sell. Someone says you should sell. That's a good answer. Borrow. Okay. But if I'm a bank, someone had a yes. What would you do?
So I think share some equity.
Sell equity. Okay.
That's part of the company.
Those are all ideas. But the hedge bank wants his money now. You know how long it takes to borrow off $100 million?
Jack's very financing in terms.
So you offer them a share of your business.
So, it's an interesting story. I mean, I'll spare you some of the details. But this is indicative of how there's a little bit of game theory going on here. So we started with the banks we owed the most money. We said, Mr. Bank, if we go down, you go down. So work with us. Be patient. In time, we will give you your money. What do you think? Did they buy it? No, yes, what do you think?
No banks.
We owe them $300 million. I'll pay you. But, guess what? Over time, we can pay you. We did that for 23 of the 24 banks. True story. On the last bank, 8 p.m. Saturday night, we owed them $5 million. He said, no, we want your money now. And if we don't get our money now, it doesn't matter. We will close you out. We will foreclose you. We will call. And we didn't have $5 million. And they were insistent because they didn't know us. Those banks that we owed a lot of money to, we've been working with them for 5, 6 years. They knew us. The bank we owed the least amount to, we were just like one of many. So then we had to have a big conference and we had to borrow $100 million. And we had to also agree what we call a standstill with the hedge banks so that they wouldn't call. So it was difficult. But as part of that, they gave us 3 conditions. You hinted at those answers. They said you need to borrow some money to get through this current period, and you need to sell equity because you owe us so much money, we don't trust you. And you need to restructure your hedge book. That sounds obvious, doesn't it? So over a period of 2 years, we got 100 million. And then we spent 2 years selling our most expensive asset. We didn't sell all of it. It was in Tanzania. We were building a mine. And but we did an auction, and I think we raised about $400 million. And that also paid off a lot of people. And, but then we spent 2 years restructuring our hedge book. And what we realized was that we had gone from protection to speculation. So what do you think the definition of speculation is? Just simply.
You anticipate an increase in price.
What do you think the difference between protection and speculation is? I owed 100 units. What is the difference between speculating and protection? Just think numbers. Yeah.
With protection, there's surety, speculation.
Very simple way to think about speculation. We were selling more than we had. And that happens a lot. So we actually hedged. We had 100, we hedged 200 because it's a financial instrument. You can buy it. I can buy that hedge, I can buy the put, I can buy the call for 200 units, even though I had 100. At the end of the day, the argument that worked with those we owed the most money was that we have the gold to deliver into the hedge. You understand what I just said? If it's a call and they want their money, I can give you the gold. But if I have only 100 units of gold and I've hedged 200, after the 100, what do? I don't have any more gold to sell. So we had become so complex in our hedging, we had actually now started to speculate. We were no longer protecting. And how do you think that happens? You have a publicly listed company, experienced executives. How do you think you go from doing something that is supposed to protect you to now becoming a speculator? How do you think that happens? Confidence? Okay. What else? Complacency? Okay. But how does it happen in organizations? Because we are all business people. Am I right? Yeah. How does it happen? How does complacency manifest itself in an organization?
A period of a good run makes you confident.
Period of a good run. What about the checks and balances in the organization? What about governance? What about oversight? What about controls? What about audit reports? You think if all those things were in there, we would be in this place? But we're publicly listed. Every quarter we had to file investor reports. What I can tell you is that derivatives can be quite complicated. And it is very easy. And this happens a lot in a lot of companies, especially in finance. You actually don't understand what's there on the piece of paper. It happens a lot. But boards are supposed to be those bodies that provide the governance of these organizations. So, what do you think? No aspersions against anybody on the Ashanti Goldfields board. Do you think Ashanti Goldfields board knew what management was doing? I'd gone from protection to speculation? I'm not sure. So now we're talking about how you measure things, how you report things, how you interrogate things. Okay, so you've gone from, you had some very, very clever people in the organization. How did they go from protection to speculation? Where were the controls? Where were the questions? Where was the governance? I was in a board meeting that day when the CFO had to tell the board, we do not have $30 million to to pay for those cash calls. We were astonished. We do not have $30 million, publicly listed company. One of the things you learn when you are in an organization is governance is the key to your success. The controls, the checks and balances, the reporting, the measurement of the things that you do. And if you can't explain that actually you are speculating and not protecting, won't I continue doing what I'm doing? That was the story there. Another interesting part of this saga. Share price was $7 a share. Immediately we started to get into trouble, it went below 2. We lost hundreds of millions of value overnight. Immediately our major shareholder filed suit against management. He said management must be removed. We're doing a poor job. The government of Ghana joined that suit. So, we were negotiating against our hedge banks. We were fighting our managers. We were fighting the government of Ghana to stay alive. Fortunately for us, it was a stepwise process. The first thing we did was we got the standstill with the hedge parties. Despite all our problems, they said you have enough gold that eventually you can deliver against this hedge. So if we are around, we are worth more to us alive than dead. If they kept us alive. First thing we did. Then we made commitments. We said we will sell our most expensive asset and pay some of our debts. Then we will restructure our hedge book so that we won't get into this kind of trouble again. When we made those commitments, they said we'd rather want you around than not around. So they actually, what's the right word, supported management against all these lawsuits against us. So they came to see the president and said, don't sack these people. They're not bad people. And we had to have this campaign with our shareholders to assure them almost on a daily basis that it's value here. We are fixing the company. We are deleveraging the balance sheet. We are paying off our debts. We are fixing our hedge book. And we are sorting out our governance, where you come up with more and more. One of the things that happened at Ashanti is that the board was filled with what we call insiders. I think there was maybe only one, what we call independent, non-executive on the board, which means that everyone on the board worked for Ashanti and or for the chief executive. What kind of questions or governance or controls do you think happened? Everybody works for the CEO.
They repeat because they can't question the CEO. The employees.
Now, there are corporate governance rules in all countries. All countries. We're not talking Ghana. The US, the UK, that require every board must have a mix of non-executive, independent people who have nothing to do with the company. Otherwise, you will not get the kind of questioning, interrogation of issues that companies can easily not know the answers to. That's very important. And Ashanti had to do that. But then we spent the next 2 years deleveraging our hedge book. And I ran that committee. And this is where we realized how complicated our hedge book was. And we started to, sell the shares, sell the hedges, and for, I would say, at least 5, 6 years, Ashanti lost money every year as it sold off these hedges because we were not making money. And then there was a period of time, if we hadn't sold off our most expensive assets, we would have gone out of business because we had no money to pay for the things that we had lost money on. And the other thing that happened, which you all know, is that from a certain point of view, we became quite weak as a company. We were not strong, we did not have money, we were losing money. We were selling our most expensive area with Andoh Gold. Andoh Gold, as a big company, if you like, took us over, was a merger anyway. And so that also supported the company, which is why we have now a company called Andoh Gold Ashanti and no longer Ashanti Gold. So that's the story. It happened 20 years ago this month. Who can tell me some lessons? Help me feel that you heard everything I said. What are some of the lessons from this story? Did you hear that? Corporate governance is very important. And why do I bring that up? Because in my career as an executive, I would argue that is the most important thing you will learn as an executive. Good corporate governance is the key to a company's success. It doesn't matter whether you're a finance person, a legal person, an HR person. If your institution doesn't have good corporate governance, you could be headed for a cliff, or you could be heading nowhere. What is another lesson about Ashanti that you learned today?
Managing, it's important to manage critical relationships. Like if the 23 hedge funds didn't believe in you, or if you didn't have the negotiating power or the relationship with them without feeling it.
It's true. Relationships are very important, no matter where, but certainly when you're a publicly listed company, even more so. Okay. Any others worth sharing?
Speculation is not the same as protection.
Speculation is not the same as protection. And you'd be surprised how many companies do not know that. You would be surprised. You'd be surprised. Yes?
I think you should not expose yourself too much in the market area, like you hedged a lot of your assets. That exposure.
That's good. So today I work for Tullow. So Tullow looks at, it produces about 100 million barrels of oil every year, let's say, roughly. That's a lot of money, by the way. Its hedge policy is that it hedges no more than 60% of its production to pay off its bank obligations. And the other 40% just moves around. So what you see is that there's a predictable cash flow for a lot of its business. And then whether the oil price goes up or down, it rides. It's actually quite conservative, but so far it's worked for them. One of the most successful airline stories that I like is a company called Southwest. And Southwest, for 20 years minimum, they made money year in, year out because they hedged. Did they speculate? No. They were very conservative. They protected their cash flows. So no matter what happened to the price of airline fuel, they always had money to pay off their debts. And as airlines in the US in particular had difficulties, Southwest always made money. It was because they had a very prudent hedge book. But how do you think they had a prudent hedge book? What's the key?
Yeah.
I've given you the clue. What's the key?
Governance and corporate
Governance. They had the right governance. They had the right policies. They had the right checks and balances. They had the right measurements. They had the right checks. Governance is very important. Any other lessons? Yes.
So I don't know if it's a lesson, but I believe maybe the finance team wasn't so skilled in terms of expertise and derivatives and all those things. I think that could be a factor.
I think you hit onto something there. What I would say is that if you work for an international company, yes, I'm sure you are good. Don't underestimate the self-interest of your lawyers and bankers. And I can tell you that our bankers in particular were happy to sell you stuff even they didn't understand, as long as they made money. They didn't really care about you. That happens. Yes.
Mine is a question. While all this was going on, why didn't the government try to help other than pushing each other?
Because some political undercurrents going on there. But that's where relationships come in, isn't it? We had some good relationships. I have one lesson which I think is helpful for a lot of us as well, and it happens in life as well. Ashanti was a victim of its own success. We had been so successful for so many years, we could do no wrong. We were the golden boys of the stock exchange. We could do no wrong. And because we were so successful, we invested all our money into all these things, and we had no money sitting around. We were the victims of our own success. So sometimes in your life, in the corporate life, rapid growth can create problems. You always have to think carefully as you grow very rapidly how you protect yourself on the downside. Rapid growth has its own challenges. Okay, I think it's time for questions, yes? Okay. So who wants to ask a question? I think I've asked all my questions. Yeah.
Aside of the governance issues, what do you think would have been more prudent as an investment option than the hedging at that time, since the price was down?
I think hedging was a very good way to go. But I do think that we sort of got carried away. And we believed our cleverness, and we didn't have enough controls in place. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Was there an awareness of the exposure you were receiving?
I'm sorry?
Was there an awareness of the exposure you were receiving?
At the highest, at the point, at the peak of the crisis, now we're in October of '99. Everybody knows that, you know, you could just tip us over and we go bankrupt. We owed the bank $600 million. We didn't have it.
About 10 years.
Gold is money. Gold is the only product you can hedge that far out. It's money. I mean, the central banks, what do? They store gold in their vaults. Gold is unusual that way. You can't hedge most things that far out. And because it's money, the cost of it is also what you call the carrying cost, the warehousing cost, as opposed to oil or some what we call a short-dated stock or product. You know, it's not money. You've got to find someone to buy it from you. So the option prices are quite high. Got a question?
So we have a question here.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what did you take away from that experience in developing yourself?
Sure. What did I take away? I guess what I would say about that is that most of us don't walk into situations thinking that all hell will break loose. But it was probably the time I learned most in my professional career. I learned about how the banks work in the City of London. I learned about hedging. I mean, I learned about it before. I learned about hedging in business school. I took an options class, so I knew about hedging. I knew the theory of it. But I learned about hedging. And you learn about governance. And so, I mean, as a professional, you really get tested. I mean, we really, for about, I'd say a 2 to 3 month period, we weren't sure whether we were going to be around. Every day, we weren't quite sure what decision the banks would make, which bank would just get fed up with us. We weren't sure how successful the government would be, because the government at some point threatened to, you know how you can withhold your imports or they can stop you from selling your gold. I mean, they made some very serious threats. For about 3 months, we weren't sure on a day-to-day what would actually happen to the company. Would you have personal? No, but so it was a very interesting time to be part of something you are struggling to keep up and to test a lot of your skills. And but we managed. We managed. Like I said, I think what I would say is that you have to be calm under pressure. Because if you are not calm, you will freak out. And we had some very calm people in the team. You also have to be truthful. So why do I say this? Someone talked about the people in the company. Our CFO was one of the most brilliant people I had ever met. But he was the author of that hedge book. Did you understand what I just said?
Yeah.
He's one of the cleverest people I met. But he was responsible for that hedge book, single-handedly. He was the one who said, let me do a hedge with you, and with you, and with you, and with you. The day I respected him the most was when the board asked him, who was responsible for this? How did it happen? You think he blamed somebody else? He said, I didn't. I respected the man that day. So, a lesson learned professionally, integrity goes a long way.
I just add to that, it's in these times of crisis that we do learn a lot, but in my experience as well, it's the cohesiveness of the group that's there, the frankness and honesty of the group that's and togetherness. And that requires an individual. Sorry?
I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, I was just saying in my experience as well, in times of crisis, so there's a team element in this as well, that's what I'm saying. They're a cohesive team and absolute frank honesty in dealing with the issues.
That's very true. It was a very small team.
Yeah.
It was the CEO, Sam Jonah, myself, the CFO, the COO, 4 or 5 of us who had to sort of manage all this stuff. And we met every day. What are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do tomorrow? Which bank do we talk to? What do we tell them? How do we manage this? How do we manage that? And as I said, for for 3 months, we had no idea what would happen.
Now, hearing your side of the story kind of changes the perception. The public really, from time to time, seeks to lampoon, hey, Sam Jordan, you sold this country out, and all. But hearing this gives me a different perspective on what went on. So, how do you react a lot of times when, you hear some of this in the public, some of the public outcry?
I think there are a few different things at work. I mean, I don't want to get into completely, I can't speak for Sam, I suppose. But it was a shame that the government filed suit against its own management. That was a shame. That is our short-sightedness, if you like. And that is Ghana politics at play, sadly, because we politicize everything. Because he was not on our side, so he must be on the other side. Ridiculous. So that's unfortunate. I think I always felt Ashanti was one of our national champions. And I mean, certainly as an institution, it probably had the highest concentration of people with second and third degrees in the country. Mining, like oil and gas, is a very technical, sophisticated business. So whether you're a mining engineer or a finance person or an HR person, you are dealing in an international space. So Ashanti had definitely the highest concentration of people with second and third degree in the country. So what do you want to do with it as a national? Do you want to help it or you want to bring it down? We wanted to bring it down. Yes.
So how do you manage the internal communication to say you have to be calm? If you want to be calm, you have to make sure that even the staff is really focused. We come to really go through this process. And the external communication, the public, what's happening? How do you manage it?
It's a good question. Probably the internal, I'm sure that was difficult too. I actually became the investor, so I was head of business development and strategic planning, but in that 2-year period I became head of investor relations as well. Every day we spoke to the city, every day. We had a 45-minute, what's happening, what are you doing? And so you had to. The other thing about crisis is that communication, information is like gold. Whether you have nothing to say or you have something to say, being able to say gives credibility. Not showing up, not having anything to say, scares your key stakeholders. You need to be up, you need to say, this is what's going on, this is our plan, we don't have everything we need to know, but in a week or whatever. And sometimes, they'll say, well, we heard this yesterday. It's true. And you just have to constantly communicate. In crisis, communication is key. So I think internally we did some of that as well, to keep everybody calm. But certainly as a publicly listed company, we had to actually communicate every single day for at least 2 months. Until I think when we started to breathe was when we got 100 million. And we had time. We bought ourselves, basically, the 100 million bought us about 6 months to sort ourselves out. And then we went on to look to sell assets, things of that sort. So then we didn't have to communicate so much. So crisis, communication is key.
Okay, you mentioned laws pertaining to those who constitute the board. I'm wondering, were those laws not in place at that time, or was it that it was lax?
I think there's been an evolution in compliance over time. So I would say they're not laws so much as sort of best practice, but if you go to the UK today and you're publicly listed, you're required. If you, here in Ghana, if you're on a board, there are requirements that come from the central bank on how you are represented on the board, what kind of mix of independent and executives. So, and that has taken, every crisis, like an Ashanti, enforces those, because it is very much about checks and balances. It is very much about how does a big organization make sure it has the proper checks and balances, controls in place to prevent excessive behavior. So boards have adopted that. So we had to change, Ashanti had to change very quickly.
So is it now a law or they are still
Again, best practice, but if you are a listed company, depending on your jurisdiction, you are required. You are required. Governance is very important, yeah.
So I was just reflecting on some of the things you said. I read a book recently on Built to Last, and I remember you mentioned that Ashanti had existed for 100 years prior. And when you talked about the CFO owning up, taking responsibility for the decisions he took, I thought to myself, in some typical organizations now, once that CFO owns up, it's gone. So I also reflected on the fact that in spite of the absence of the strong governance structure, there must have been something about the organization's culture that ensured that he could own up, take responsibility, not get fired.
He did get replaced at some point.
Okay, well,
not immediately, but he did.
There must have been something about the culture of the organization that kept it going, through that crisis and prior. Would you share on some of
So I think what the gentleman said a few minutes ago, there was a lot of loyalty. I mean, in terms of, I think the other thing that I've certainly learned along the way in terms of effectiveness as an organization is your teams have to be effective. It doesn't matter what your team is. If you're an audit team, your HR team, or your finance. So Sam Jonah had a lot of loyalty to him, and he had a lot of loyalty to his staff. In fact, he had a lot of loyalty. So we knew he would never throw us under the bus. We had a lot of loyalty for him. So it kind of, in terms of working as a close team, loyalty, frankness, honesty, those things actually matter a lot to create that high performance team. But it's not enough. You've got to supplement it with performance and results and you name it. But trust, you learn along the way. A good leader has trust. A good organization builds trust. And if your co-workers can't trust you, or your subordinates can't trust you, in a crisis, you will implode. And there was a lot of trust in the organization. We trusted each other. We were very close. The leadership team, very small, very close. And we trusted each other. We worked with, we were loyal to each other. We were loyal to Sam. And that's how we survived.
One thing bothering my mind is during the crisis, how did you handle the fiscals operational wise?
So this is where we needed the standstill. We needed money to run. And at that point, the banks also didn't know whether you'd be around. So that $100 million, what we call a standstill, was critical. If we didn't get that money, we couldn't run. We couldn't run. So it was a key part. The message was, we were worth more alive than dead. So don't kill us. And most people agree.
But somehow I'm thinking, didn't the trust and loyalty also work against you at least? Because if one person says that, an edge, and then that trust and loyalty, you believe so much in him, then who's going to challenge him?
That's a fantastic point. So trust and loyalty is very important, but it can't be blind trust and blind loyalty. And you've heard the phrase, trust but verify. This is where checks and balances become very important.
I want to ask.
Yeah.
Why weren't the checks and balances working? Or were there like maybe government interferences or other interferences or that the leadership team were not listening? Because if audits are being done, checks and balances are going on controls, then other people in the leadership team would know that because the decision is not the right decision.
So again, I would put it to I can simplify it for you. Governance is also about leadership. I mean, I do go back to the point that sometimes being successful can be your worst enemy because you think, I don't need checks and balances. I'm very good. I don't need anybody to tell me what to do. That also happens a lot.
But that's how you got there.
So, you know, I think all of you come from different backgrounds. I mean, there's a lot to learn about, I mean, a good hedging policy. I can tell you today, I would guess at least 6 out of 10 corporate organizations in this country don't know what hedging is. I've been enough of them to understand. It's not something people understand, but it can be a very useful tool to manage your business. And so there's value in that, but if you don't use it well, it can come and bite you. Yes?
I was going to say that I think most of them have learned from the experience of Ashanti Gold. That's why they don't go there. Most of the time, if someone mentions that don't go there, Ashanti Gold fell because of that. So don't even try.
But is a lesson you learned about poor hedging? What was it that got Ashanti into trouble? Was it the hedging? Or over leverage? If I had my $30 million that day, I wouldn't be here today. Oh? So I would suggest to you, yes, I've hopefully given you a few things to think about. You know, when you look at companies and they talk about being over leveraged, these are the things that happen to over leveraged companies. Because in the life of a company and as an individual, things happen you don't expect. If you're over leveraged, you get into trouble. So a good finance professional, those of you who are finance professionals, you must, hedging is a tool to protect you. But so when you do your financial engineering and you're building your mine in Tanzania, or you're acquiring this nice shop in Kokoblele, how much combination of debt and equity do you use to acquire that? Very important. And one of the things certainly I learned in business school is your financial engineering is very important, and the financial structure of a company says a lot about the health of the company. Of course, hedging was a problem. It wasn't the only problem.
Was there what the site was made, some journal was being knighted?
He got a KBE. He got a KBE. Somebody thought he did a good job.
I'm sorry, I'm just wondering how, if corporate governance will really have been a foolproof measure to prevent it. Because when you look at the case of Lehman Brothers, for example, they also played in this kind of financial derivatives, which can be very complex. And really, I'm sure all the actors here were working in the best interest of the company. They did not need to run it down.
So let me answer that. So you raise a very good, fantastic point. So we all know about the credit crisis in 2008. It started with Lehman, actually started before that, but it really got ahead of itself. what do you think the key issues were? Not enough controls in place, taking too much risk.
Taking too much risk.
Taking too much risk, yeah. What did Ashanti do? Not enough controls in place, taking too much risk. That's what happened to Lehman Brothers. That's what happened to Barings. That's what happened. And if you understand, well, I can't pretend I do, but if you know the background of the credit crisis in 2008, you've heard of CDOs. I don't know how many of you have heard of these credit instruments. Anyway, it's all about the amount of risk. By that risk, they would package mortgage deals. And just to illustrate the point, so you know, US market is quite sophisticated. So a bank would buy $1 billion of mortgages, your mortgage, and they would package it and they would sell it to someone else. Now, if I'm a prudent financial institution, you look through the credit rating, if you like, of that portfolio. You know, banks do A and B and C, and hopefully you do. And always in that package, some very shady risk. And at some point at the height of the credit crisis, they didn't care anymore because, you know, a combination of regulations, the risk requirements for financial institutions had been lowered a lot in the US, for instance, and there were not enough controls in place. And so that you were rewarded for selling these risky investments. So risk is something that, you know, obviously derivatives addresses, but if you don't have good controls in place, if you don't have good governance in place, and, you know, that's what happens. Are we done? Sure. All right. Sure. Up to you. Any more questions? I think we're done here, but happy to answer any final ones.
I was actually going to ask him to take about 10 more minutes, but it seems that the questioning went to 25 already.
I do have one question, not related to the topic, but what's your take on the LNG market in Ghana?
LNG?
Yes, and how do you see it in maybe 10 years?
Okay. You mean the natural gas or the LNG market? We don't have an LNG market yet.
The natural gas.
The natural gas.
We have the company entering into that now in Ghana.
So, today, what I would say is that there's about, to your question, it's a bit technical, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about 300 to 400 million cubic feet a day of gas in country. Nigeria has about 100 coming in. The Jubilee partners have about 100 and something. And E&I have about 100 and something. And that's what the country can use. Most of the gas that comes into the country is used for power. Right now, we have more gas than we are using. And you know, between Nigeria and some of these other LNG, for instance, we would then have even more. Yeah. And really, the challenge we have is who pays for it. And I think that's the challenge. But I mean, so I think that's where we are really, where we are not tight. We have enough gas, and there are more sources of gas.
Don't you think that was more begin with electricity, and now we are in a crucial point?
So who followed the finance minister? I think we should do this at break. But you know, the finance minister's mid-year, he was talking about all these contracts they've signed up, they can't pay for. The biggest one is gas. Okay. So final question, I think we go on refreshment.
The first is that, you know, that the financial institutions would have BOD and the SEC providing regulations and supervision. In your case, which institutions were providing regulations or more like watching your back?
Good question. Good question. So I think I can't even say what happens in Ghana, but in other places you do have regulators who look at derivatives, especially. But in Ghana, I don't think we did. You need those kind of institutions. I think what happened with Enron and some of the others, to your question, they actually caused the downfall and the solution of accounting firms who did the auditing of those books, because they were auditing false accounts. And Arthur Anderson and a few of them just got dissolved. But the point is, the regulatory agencies are critical as well. Good.
My second bit is
I'm sorry, but we unfortunately, I know that he's willing to answer, but there's an opportunity to continue the questioning, because I think we need to give Mr. Awotwi a round of applause. Thank you for joining us. It was meant to be a moderated question time, but you were handling it so well that I didn't feel a need to intervene at all, and I was intending to ask for 10 extra minutes of questions, but you graciously have added almost 15 more minutes. So we're going to continue with the short cocktail in the Learning Commons outside to your right. The questions have been very informative. I'm not a business person. I'm not studying here as well, but it's all been interesting. So another round of applause for those of you who joined us. So everybody can join us in the Learning Common for the cocktail.